All right, we are back here on Straight Out of the Cannon. It is 6:40 in the PM on Friday, 12/20/2024. We are counting down the biggest news stories of the year 2024. So far, we had number 10, the assassination of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, spurring a whole new discussion on healthcare and how barbaric America's healthcare system is. Caitlin Clark and the rise of the WNBA and women's sports. And we talked about Russia, Ukraine still going on. What is our number 7 most important, biggest news story of 2024?
Today I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment, charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. A year ago, Sean Combs stood in Times Square and was handed a key to New York City. Today, he's been indicted and will face justice in the Southern District of New York.
Yep, that was Diddy. Yes, Diddy, Sean Diddy Combs. I think it's sort of weird to think about how Diddy was thought about in the past with in regards to his image. I remember going back to the 90s when the whole East Coast, West Coast thing was going on. People tended to view Diddy as almost a nerdy figure, almost a geek. You know, there was a perception during the whole East Coast, West Coast rivalry that Tupac and Suge were these sort of really malevolent guys, and Diddy and Biggie were just sort of these innocent guys who were just caught up in this a little bit over their heads. But over the last 30 years or so, the veil has slowly come off of of who Diddy really is, to the point where people have been calling Diddy the devil for at least about 20 years within hip-hop circles. Like, do you know how bad you got to be for people in hip-hop to call you the devil? Like, seriously, that has been his nickname in many circles for the last 20 years. The devil. One of the rappers from Bad Boy Records, his record company, wrote a book called Dancing with the Devil about his experiences of working for Diddy. And now there's so many people who truly believe that Diddy may be responsible for not just the death of Tupac, but maybe the death of Tupac and Biggie, his own artist. There is so much speculation about just exactly what and who Sean Combs really is. And this has gone on for a while now, even before these charges were filed. What is very bizarre about this case is the videotape element of it. Because it appears that there is something more sinister at work, even than the malevolent things that Diddy himself had done and was doing. It's almost a callback to the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, who many speculate was either CIA or Israeli Mossad or some sort of, who worked for either one or worked for either one or both or whatever. Because when you are filming these things, the purpose seemingly at that point is blackmail. And there is a lot of speculation about just who is on those tapes that Sean Diddy Combs recorded. Is it politicians? There's been speculation about politicians, about famous entertainers, about athletes, about some of the most important and high-profile individuals in our society. The Diddy tapes have the potential to be politically and culturally shattering. They really do. We have no idea of exactly who is on those tapes and what they're doing on those tapes. Well, we have some idea what they're doing on the tapes, but we have no idea who it is, and all the speculation is coming to a head. And in the year 2025, I'm guessing we will probably get some names. That's what I guess that'll be one of my predictions. I think we're going to get some names, and I think people will be shocked at some of the maybe politicians and maybe some of the entertainers that they hear about on those tapes. I've read some names I'm not going to say here because I don't want to get sued, and I don't want to be involved in putting people's business out there in the streets who may not even be guilty. It may just be hearsay and, maybe just speculation. But I think next year we're gonna see a lot of heads roll in regards to these Diddy tapes. So number 7, biggest news story of the year 2024. Sean Diddy Combs being arrested and charged with racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Wow. What is our number 6? Let's do this.
Joe Biden is not going to be the Democratic presidential nominee. And there's 2 big reasons for this. The first was his debate performance against Donald Trump. He showed his full 81 years. He stammered, he struggled to answer. This caused panic among donors and fellow lawmakers and raised fundamental questions about his age. The second major factor in this was the Democrats' own anxiety about beating Trump. They see a second Trump presidency as a danger to democracy. They fear Trump. And that overriding fear of Trump is what compelled them to say they needed another candidate for president.
Yep. Again, this is another one of those stories where most of the time this would be the biggest news story of said year, but because everything that's happened during this year has happened, it's just kind of like, yeah. Joe Biden, just the president of the United States, just decided to step down and no longer run for re-election because he was too old after being exposed for being not completely of sound mind. And the crazy thing about this is, I remember when that first debate happened, and we talked about it here. And so many people, I've gotten into so many wars here on this show with people who called in and told me I was crazy for saying that Joe Biden wasn't all there. Just today, I just saw a news story came out that's going into depth at how the White House and the people around Joe Biden went to great lengths to hide this man's physical condition, to the point where they would not even let him meet with a lot of donors. When he would do events, they would give him cue cards for the simplest instructions, like where to sit and where to look. He was incapable of even, guiding himself to the right seat, and having any off the cuff or improvised banter was just off of the menu, which is crazy because that's what Joe Biden really specialized at when he was younger. Joe Biden he had sort of a used car salesman type charm. I would compare him to Gavin Newsom right now, a guy that you know is a little bit sleazy, but is quick on his feet and will, kind of snowball you a little bit. A BS artist, but that's what he was good at. That's what Joe Biden was good at for most of his career, and now he's somebody who can't improvise in any way. And for even going back to the early stages of his presidency, his physical and mental condition was held away from the American public, and this is a huge scandal. This is a huge scandal because who is actually running the country now? Who's running the country now? It's not Joe Biden. Is it Jill Biden? Is it Kamala Harris? I doubt it. Is it Anthony Blinken? Who is it? Pete Buttigieg? Who's actually running the country? And we don't know. And it is in large part because there was such a concerted effort to keep the mental state and the mental acuity of Joe Biden away from the public. That is a huge scandal. One I expect to unfold even more in the near future. So our number 6 biggest news story of 2024 is Joe Biden being exposed as being probably senile or some level of indisposed and having to end his candidacy in the presidential election after his disastrous performance against Donald Trump in the debate. Let's get to our number 5.
The Madison Police Department responded to a mass shooting at the Abundant Life Christian School today. Officers were dispatched to the school, which is located on the city's east side at 10:57 a.m. They arrived to find multiple people suffering from gunshot wounds. 3 people, including the shooter, are dead. The shooter has now been identified as 15-year-old Natalie Rupnow, who went by the name Samantha. She was a student at the school, and evidence suggests she died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. A teacher and a teenage student were pronounced dead at the scene at that school. 6 other students and a teacher were injured and taken to area hospitals. 2 students remain in critical condition. We are still working to determine a motive. Detectives have talked to her family members this evening, as well as conduct a search of the shooter's home here in Madison.
Yep. Another year full of school shootings and mass shootings in general. It has become sort of a common occurrence in this country. It's crazy how I was just talking to my mother about this a few days ago, about in the late 80s when Lori Dan, who was a woman who went into a school in Chicago and shot up a lot of children. When that happened, it was the most shocking thing in the world. Nobody had even imagined somebody, much less a woman, would go into a school and shoot a bunch of kids. Nobody could imagine that anybody would do something like that. And now we have these school shootings on a sometimes weekly occurrence. This has become life in America. Now, different people have their opinions about why we have these type of mass shootings, and a lot of people say it's the guns. A lot of people say it's mental illness. A lot of people say it's mentally ill people having access to guns. A lot of people say it's a spiritual deficit in our society, that we've turned away from God as a society, and that's why we're sort of self-destructing. People have all kinds of explanations as to why this is happening. A lot of people say it's SSRIs. A lot of the school shooters have been on antidepressants. And it's going back to the early 90s. There's been a lot of talk about SSRIs being responsible for people's psychotic behavior, people committing suicide, people killing their children, people killing lots of other people, has been blamed on SSRIs. I can't say whether that is the truth or not. I'm not a doctor. But it is definitely speculated that this is what goes on. Let me get this call. Hello, caller.
Well, good evening.
What's up?
This is Scott. How are you doing, brother?
I'm good.
Well, it's a great subject, I think. I'd like to introduce bioneurology.
Mm-hmm.
And recognize that the brain is an organ that not nourished properly can lead to long-term handicap. No?
Right.
And so we still don't recognize that the child in the womb is being abused by our lack of civility, by our lack of continuity as people.
Right.
We don't nourish children. We don't really nurture them as much as we just respect the idea of them and be willing to just mow people down that disrespect the idea.
Right.
But if we've got insurance guys that are taking advantage of the corporate side of the food industry, feeding us things, creating foods that are addictive to children. Now about 40% of the kids are obese. They're headed towards high blood pressure, heart disease, other kinds of, unnatural, what seem like natural death, but they're really autoimmune diseases. And so now the insurance companies understand what the food industry is doing, and the people in the government, if they don't recognize, it's only because they're like those three monkeys: no see, no hear, no speak. Right.
Right.
The idea is they don't say anything unless there's some kind of public embarrassment that's of enough gravitas.
Right. Thank you for calling, bro. It's all good.
Yeah, big up.
Thank you for your call. I agree. We definitely with this new administration are going to have hopefully have a reckoning for these food companies and for these drug companies. RFK seems to be very intent on holding these people who've taken advantage of the American public for a long time and bought off our politicians accountable. Let's see if he's really about that life. Let's see if Donald Trump caves to the pressure of his corporate friends, all of his friends who make money and by exploiting the American people and exploiting the mental health crisis. We will see in the next year. But yes, that is as of November 30th, 648 people have been killed and 2,227 people have been wounded in 547 mass shootings in the United States in the year 2024. So that's where we are. That's where we are. At the beginning of the year, we had at the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade, we had a mass shooting where, a DJ at a radio station was killed, and 21 other people, including at least 9 children, were injured in the shooting outside of Kansas City Union Station. So they were going to celebrate the Super Bowl, and they ended up being shot. You know, in Chicago, right across the border there, a child was killed and 10 other people, including 3 other children, were injured when 3 shooters walked up to a street and opened fire at a remote crowd during a family gathering in the back of the yards. So this is just sort of a daily occurrence here in the United States. Let me get this caller. Hello, caller.
Okay, good evening, good man.
What's up?
Look, good man. Everything you speak of is the truth. You got to understand what you're speaking about is already been reported in the Bible. All of these different tragedies must happen before the world ends. This is the end of the time. Have you read this before in the good book in the Bible?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so what you're talking about, I'm glad you're bringing it back up so everybody, whoever don't know, they'll know now. So
right.
This is no...
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
This is no surprise to me, and anybody that read the good book know all of this will happen before the world ends. This is just the way the good Lord, put it like this. The good Lord record has already been recorded, and it's in the Bible. I don't know how much.
Thank you for calling, brother.
Okay.
Thanks for your call. I mean, I definitely understand that, but you have to remember, this doesn't happen in every other country. Like, America's not the whole world. This only happens here. This doesn't happen in England. Doesn't happen in Canada regularly. Doesn't happen in France or Germany or, you know, Australia. This is not a regular occurrence in most of the world. Pretty much just America and maybe third world countries. You might hear about stuff like a mass murder or a mass kidnapping from Boko Haram in Nigeria or something. But you definitely don't get that in most of the world. And that's important to state, that America is an outlier. We are an outlier. This is not what most of the world is about. Most of the world does not have this level of violence attached to them. And so, yeah, violence is a part of human nature and has been since the days of the good book. But America is especially violent for a first world country. And that's important to state. All right, folks. Let's take a break from our countdown real quick and get into some happy happies. We'll be right back after these.